you're a serial entrepreneur. You've built a number of businesses over the last 15 years. So how do you go from being one of the early investors in Spotify and head of special projects there to Bitcoin? How did you get infected?
So kind of around autumn last year, I started spending a lot of time looking at it through a mutual friend who's in the audience here, and they'd spend a lot of time looking at various investments. And I wanted to angel invest in a Bitcoin company. BitPay came up, spent a lot of time looking at that, and that's what got me first excited. And I guess part of it was the ecosystem around the actual currency itself. Having seen what's happened over the last 13 or 15 years, there isn't necessarily just one winner. There's a lot of surrounding ecosystem companies that you can bet on who are going to rise if the core product, the core industry rises. So BitPay was the first investment, and I guess being an investor in there gives me access, some sort of proprietary knowledge of how this space is panning out, if the revenues are going up, where the markets are going. And that got me really, really excited. And then various other things were taking place in January and February. Sumly, which is a company I was involved in, that got sold to Yahoo. And I was sitting in Hong Kong airport, and this is at the end of March, beginning of April, when the price fluctuations were going up and down like a yo-yo. And in one day, I had, I think, the 5th email from somebody who I regard as very financially savvy going, hey, should I be buying coins? Who's Mt. Gox? And I realized I wasn't being asked because I was an expert. I was just being asked because, one, there was a lack of information, there's misinformation out there, and two, I'm probably just slightly less ignorant than everyone else out there. And it's very easy to try and pretend to be an expert, but I'm as clueless as most of the people here, and we're just reading up more than the common man on the street. So I came back, asked my team that they had 4 weeks to launch something, and we needed to get something up. And 4 weeks, 8 hours, and 22 minutes later, we launched Coindesk, and that was taking up 25% of my time. And for me, I had no desire to build a media company or publishing company. There's no money in doing content online. There are publications going bust left, right, and center. But it's a way for me to learn, and it's a way for the industry to learn. But the core goal for Coindesk is to spread factual information in plain English, because the masses, whether they're in Whitehall or Washington, they aren't reading the deep technical analysis about Bitcoin or digital currencies. They want to be explained in plain English, and that's what I feel my role is as a messenger to an extent for the community.
Awesome, thanks. So Charlie, what about you? So how did you get into Bitcoin? What's your personal journey?
It's a good question. I'm fairly young. I'm about 23, and I was in college working on a different startup at the time. And I got involved in Bitcoin. I just read about it, and it just took over my life the first minute I heard about it, and all my passion and everything that I was involved with my other startup, I just dropped it. I couldn't even focus on that, and I told my partners, like, either buy me out or I'm leaving. I got to do this Bitcoin thing. And they said, no, stay on. Let's continue. We'll sell the company. We'll figure something out. I said, okay. I spent the next few weeks just reading about Bitcoin, and I came across a forum post on the Bitcoin. It wasn't even Bitcoin Talk yet. It was forums.bitcoin.org. And I see this guy, Gareth Nelson, post an idea. He says, I have an idea for a company called Fast Mt. Gox Pay, because we have this great thing called Bitcoin, and it's really quick, and it's fictionless, but no one could get it. And if you can't get it, then you can't use it. So we got to fix that issue. So he posts this forum post, and I was the first person to comment on it. I said, yeah, it's a great idea. I sent him a private message. I said, I'm going to send you some $1,000. Let's write some code, and let's see what we can do here. We were playing with some names, and the word BitInstant just sounded like the best idea. And fast forward 2.5 years later, I still never met him. He lives 6 hours away in Wales. He's autistic. He's Asperger's. Unbelievable guy. He won't meet me. He's scared that if he meets me, then I won't like him anymore. Because we have this great relationship on the internet, and it's like, I guess his autism and my ADHD work like really, really well together.
Love it.
So that's how that worked out, and we have a great team of people in New York, about 20 people, and it's great because of the foundation, it's really a lot of fun to help other startups and other people and other entrepreneurs get involved in the Bitcoin space. So our door is a revolving door. At any given time, you walk into our office, and there are 4 different companies just sitting at desks or in our conference room, using it, holding meetings. When companies from the Valley come into town, they use our offices. More than welcome to. Advice, connections. I'll introduce investors and entrepreneurs all together. And because when we got involved 2 years ago, I remember I put up the first $1,000 to do it, and then I went to VCs, and I remember I sold my car, and I had no idea about any investors, what Series A was or seed round. I still have no idea what all that stuff means. And I remember I sold my car to this guy when I was 18, and he said, if you're ever involved in something in the future, call me up. And he was the first kind of investor that I met, so I sat down with him. His name is Keith, and he wouldn't give me any money, but he tried to introduce me to some people. No one would give me anything. This is like early 2011. So I went to my mom, and my mom said, okay, I believe in you. I still have no idea what you're doing till today, but here's $10,000. Do what you got to do. Enjoy. And she just wanted me to do it because she had no idea if I was going to try or fail, but she said, you're so passionate about this, go learn, make mistakes, figure out what you want to do, and just experiment. And that's what Gavin told me also. Gavin said, Bitcoin is a wild west. You really just got to go. Don't wait for an invitation from someone, just do it. And if you need to fail 4 times to succeed, just do it and try and try and try. And thankfully, after that $10,000 that really helped us grow, still couldn't get investment rounds, so I had to go all over the place. And then I remember going on Bruce Wagner's TV show, the Bitcoin show, and that was the only beneficial thing, is I literally said to the audience, whoever's watching, I need money for this company, please, someone. And then I got home, and then about an hour later, I get a call from a guy named Roger Ver, who said, just tell me where to send the money to, and we'll figure out the paperwork later. And that's how BitInstant was born.
So Peter, what about your journey to Bitcoin?
Yeah, I want to say I just recently walked in an employee who guiltily clicked their homepage away from Coindesk. So they don't even use the Coinlab homepage there. I thought, Shaq would be happy to hear
I like
that.
Coindesk.
Yeah, me too. I've been around since early 2010. I missed the pizza buy by like 2 months. I think I've said this a number of times. I turned my computer on, it mined 200 Bitcoins in a few hours. Back then, the instructions were just like, leave the client on for a few hours and you'll have 50 Bitcoins. And then when Gox came around, I was a very early user, and I sold 200 of them for $12. And I was like, oh my God, my computer made money, it's real! At the time, I had just wound down an African biofuels company and had no capital and was like keeping my marriage together. And so I put 6 to 9 months into a plan for a Bitcoin startup. My take at the time, and actually this is still my take, is that just one of the most important things that could be done would be market liquidity. So high quality liquidity and particularly in the US, for those of you who don't know as much about the money flows, US dollars tend to buy European, Russian Bitcoins is the money flows. And so, and actually a lot of the downward price we've seen, so if you go back to Gox failing in March, and this kind of huge price spikes based on their engine problems, it dropped to 140 and then dropped down to 100, and where we are now. That 140 down through today is largely because it is very, very hard to buy Bitcoins with US dollars at scale right now. It's just extremely difficult. And so we, even at the time, Coinlab has now taken, we're kind of like Nicolas Cage and Gone in 60 Minutes. Like, I've had a handshake deal on Mt. Gox twice. And when we closed our deal in March, it was like, great. And then when we closed it last year in October. And so then when the Gox deal ended, we also, like I said, have a mining play. And I actually, just as a pitch, I have a few pitches for you guys. One is join the foundation, individual, institutional. I would love nation state seats. I think I could push that through the board. So if you're here and want to talk about that, it would be wonderful to have regulators engaged. My other pitch is think about mining. A lot of your finance folks, miners vote on the network. It's just incredibly strategic. Everyone has a right to go ahead and mine and have a say over how the protocol develops. So we're reworking. We're trying to bring some more sophisticated Wall Street models to the exchange market now, like liquidity that can serve any of the retail brokers that want to launch in the States, not just a kind of monopolistic thing. Whatever, I could keep talking, but I won't.
Great. We'll talk more about that. So Shaq, you're actively investing in this space. So what are the areas of value creation you get excited about in the cryptocurrency space?
Having spent a lot of time looking at various companies, the thought process that goes through my head is, whilst the exchange looks like it's the most exciting one, and hey, this is just my opinion and I may be wrong and people may choose to disagree with me, investing in exchange to me seems like the highest probable risk of going to jail and the lowest probable risk of actually making any money. Now, they're two extremes, but
You're right.
that's how I look at it.
I disagree completely, good sir.
So I'm not going to be investing in an exchange anytime soon. There are so many fringe opportunities that are going to come up here. So if you look at digital currency and Bitcoin and where we are today, similar to being on the internet in 1995, think of the hosting companies, the secure certificate providers, the domain name registrars. All of these things are needed for the industry to mature, to take it to the next level. They may seem very unsexy, they may seem very boring, but they've been played out before. They were played out in the software industry, they were played out in the early days of the internet, they've been played out in the cloud computing space, they're being played out in the mobile wars that are taking place. And I guess having some gray hairs and having lost lots of money of my own over the years in this learning curve as an entrepreneur, you look at what works and what has worked before and then try and replicate it for today's needs. So I think the fringes of the ecosystem itself is something which I'm looking at very much. I am invested in the currency itself because there's no point investing in Bitcoin companies if you aren't invested in Bitcoin in itself, right? So my exposure right now would be BitPay as one investment, a couple of active ongoing talks with some companies. There's Coindesk, which is an information piece, but that's very valuable to me because it allows me to make the right decisions, I hope. And then, let's see where it ends up. But exchange won't be the one I'll be doing anytime soon.
So Charlie and Peter, and Shaq as well, you guys are all spending a lot of time on the West Coast. What's the view from institutional investors out there? I think, in Europe, we got a bit of a taste. It seems like in Europe, maybe the people aren't quite there yet.
It's ironic because the regulatory here is way easier, but investors are a little less enthused, I think. Yeah.
So what is it like out there at the moment?
Well, Silicon Valley is very sort of cycle-oriented. So 3 months ago, it was just a huge wave of interest. Right now, if you have a 3D printing company, you're going to get like $50 million next week. So
I want to 3D print Bitcoins.
yeah, I do too. That would be cool. That would be cool.
I'm patenting that. Don't take my idea. I think a lot of investors are waiting for more quality entrants. I think, and we heard this in the investor panel a little bit, capital capacity is just a really big question for this space still. And in a way, it's weird, the press and media are just not out ahead of the possibility in the space, but I think they're out significantly ahead of what we've all been able to do so far. And and I think one thing about the exchange is it's an infrastructure business, right? And you could say lots of bad things about it, and I'd only disagree with the go to jail part. I think regulatory is absolutely something you can do well at, but the crazy good consumer stuff being built on top of that infrastructure, I really want to see more of that. I'm like, hey, come on, guys. No, so I agree with him. Is this microphone on? Yeah. I agree with him. Infrastructure is super important. You need to build infrastructure. The foundation is super important to build that. But at the same time, applications on top of that infrastructure, like Boost VC and Adam Draper is working on, that's also super important. The problem is that we're seeing now is that there is a lot of money still interested in Bitcoin. There are a lot of investors that want to put money in. But the entrepreneurs in the space, including myself, we're simply not mature enough, or we don't know enough how to be entrepreneurs or how to run companies. My biggest problem, and my investors were able to help me with that, is I simply didn't know how to run a company. I simply didn't know how to not be a kid. And thankfully that they helped me a lot with that. Not, it wasn't always great times. Sometimes it was a little bit of a slap in the face, but you need that. We need more, I guess, serial entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who have built companies before get involved in the space and try to start up Bitcoin companies. And slowly but surely we're seeing guys like Shakil and people like that coming in. And even the early adopters, it's a lot of experimenting. So trying and failing works. You look at TradeHill. TradeHill was one of the first startups in Bitcoin, like really super early. And TradeHill is what got me into Bitcoin. Jared was the first person I ever spoke to. And he tried and he failed, right? But it was so difficult at the time. What did he do? He got back up and he relaunched TradeHill 2.0. And now he's a real company, real staff. It's a lot tighter. He has investors, and he'll do well because he was able to make a lot of mistakes early on and learn from those mistakes and try it again.
So, what is it like having the Winklevoss brothers as investors?
No comment.
One thing I think is possible in this space is that we may leapfrog some traditional seed Series A type business models and go straight to corporate partnerships or just very established players coming in and saying, Coinlab is actually in the middle of deal talks at a deal like this. Very, very experienced person on Wall Street who just says, I don't know, I love Bitcoin, I don't know anything about it. And it may be that that's how this space gets its operating talent, really, is with these partnerships. So.
That's true. It's true because you have great ideas. Bitcoin has unbelievable utility. Look at micropayments, donations. Try sending 10 cents over the internet today. You can't do that. Look at the paywall model, right? You're paying $15 for a Wall Street Journal subscription to read an article online, but most of us don't want to do that. But if we had a few bit cents, we'd be more than happy to pay a few cents to read an article. So someone who's going to build a product off of that and pitch it to the Wall Street Journal, it's great. Infrastructure like that is really good. But like Peter said, if you can build a remittance company, like what I'm trying to do, and you can build a great product, you can go to a company like Western Union, MoneyGram, Zoom, and say, here, we have a small team of people, we're doing some business, but if we kind of act as a puzzle piece and integrate it to you guys, we can show you Bitcoin's utility, and we can take this infrastructure and take this global payment system and make your fees go down and make your, instead of charging 5%, or like Western Union charges 10% to move money around the world, we can charge 1 or 2% using Bitcoin as our back-end settlement systems. So we've developed pitches and ideas and going to, like Peter said, these larger companies that have been doing this for hundreds of years. I mean, Western Union's a 163-year-old company. They can't afford to not look at Bitcoin.
I'm sold. If I were at Western Union, I would have you in. I'd be like, tell me more.
To touch upon the topic which Charlie just answered, if you look at Silicon Valley and you look at the companies being created, there are a number of issues we've got at stake because you've got 3 types of people at least trying to create the companies, being involved in the space. You've got the anarchists, and excuse my language, whose attitude is, fuck the government, fuck the central banks, fuck everyone, let's bring down the system with Bitcoin. You do not want these people running these companies.
They can't run companies, they're anarchists.
But this is what is being portrayed in the media, right? So the second ones are the idealists. So I met someone the other week, sat me down, explained what he was doing, and he said, I'm building a wallet for one of the emerging market countries. Great idea. And I said to him, explain me some of your security. And I'm not necessarily a deep technical guy, but I know enough of security before I have to go and get an expert. And I said, so run me through some of your security protocols. And he says to me, well, the password's locked away in a safe in my mother's house. I'm like, okay. I said, and what happens when you get run over? And he's like, I hadn't thought of that. But at the same time, he's looking to create a secure wallet for an emerging market. There could be $30 million, $100 million worth of Bitcoins or tens of thousands of Bitcoins in there. And he gets run over, and he has given absolutely no thought to the fact that there's a lot of wealth stored there. And his whole thing is, well, my mother's got it in the safe, and after she's buried me or whatever, she'll unlock it and give people. So this is the level of thought that they've gone to, hadn't even factored in what else, right? You just cannot have this. And when somebody like this is presenting to Silicon Valley VC, and a lot of VCs, and Stefan is proof here, are ex-entrepreneurs who are sitting there going, are you kidding me? There's no way I'm going to write you a check. Because it's different going, I don't know what if somebody says about security and they say, I don't actually know or haven't thought about it, it's fine. If the whole thing is, well, I have thought about it and the password's on an A4 piece of paper locked away in a room. And then you've got the pure capitalists who look at this as a pure opportunistic money-making idea without any concern for the ecosystem or the hard work that's gone into it. And that doesn't work because they're like, well, yeah, let's just go and buy a bunch of Bitcoins and let's just sell them and make some money. And there isn't any exit pattern here, right? So from a VC and you've been an investor, who's buying these companies? So if you're running a late stage of a fund, you're like, well, I don't even know when my exit's gonna come. Is an exit gonna come? So right now, there are lots of different types of companies being created. I think it's gonna be a combination of idealists who wanna change the world, really sharp entrepreneurs, and I have to give credit to Daniel Ek with what he did with Spotify, because when I met him at 22 or 23, his attitude was, and Stefan remembers these meetings, Stefan would go, I don't know why you two are getting into this. I've just spent many years getting into it. It's a horrible business. Daniel's like, oh, fuck that. We'll work it out. And 6 years later, we did work it out. And, you know, we're a multi-billion-dollar company right now. So you need that naivety, but also confidence that you can pull it off. And the final one, I guess, is guys like me and people who've got gray hairs and who've been around the block a few times are like, well, we can't tell you what to do, but we can tell you what not to do. And I think it's going to be a combination of that. And the final thought on that, I would say, is the market leaders in the digital currency space, I don't think any of us know who they are right now, and they probably haven't been created yet. It's the next wave of companies who are going to control this space.
It's funny because we have a document that says like, if Charlie gets hit by a truck, ... how to run the company. But I think there's a fourth one also. I think that a lot of Bitcoiners are purists as well. Myself, we believe that technology can change the world. And Bitcoin is two things, as we all know, the capital being the lowercase b. And one is the currency and one is that payment system. It's a global payment infrastructure. I like to compare it as you look at the human body as the global payment network. The veins are PayPal, banks, Western Union, and banks help move blood around the body. Bitcoin is both blood and vein. So I believe that as a technology, you can open up trade around the world, in Africa and the Middle East, take away friction and take away middlemen. And so I'm not an idealist. I want to see a big exit, but I'm more interested in the technology and how that can better, I guess, world peace in a way.
So touching on that, so Peter, what are the things you have in mind right now along lines of challenges as chairman of the foundation? Yeah. I should ask the question to all of you, by the way. What are the things that keep you a bit worried at night about cryptocurrencies? What are the things you'd like to tackle?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very sanguine. I'm actually really encouraged by the regulatory stuff that's happening. I'm like, in this one thing, I'm not with Eric Voorhees. Everything else, I'm 100% in line with how he thinks. But I think the regulatory is moving. We need more engagement. You know, the foundation needs more money for lobbying in the U.S. and to start up its international chapters, which will be launching later this year. So join us. That's good. I think, you know, something I was emailing you about, Pamir, one interesting dynamic we have is Mt. Gox for a few years has been the price-setting exchange. And that's just because it had the vast majority of liquidity. So if you pull out your blockchain app or some other app, it will quote you the Gox price converted. Now Gox's liquidity is going away for a variety of reasons, and the space itself has to become more sophisticated. So one thing Coinlab is doing is just putting out a free and open invite to exchanges to we'll publish one feed and share any revenues that come from that based on volumes. So I'd like to see more integration, like less knife fighting among exchanges, and more like cutting everybody in. I think that's a big deal. Like, what is the price? What is the fair price right now? Is a big question. I don't know. What else did I mention in my email? Do you remember?
We talked about mining as well.
Yeah, mining. I mean,
mining capacity.
We heard this in the Iceland talk. Like, how many companies ASIC mining? How many are there? This is mining's highly lucrative right now.
Is it still though?
Yeah, if you own a chip company, an ASIC mining company, boards will pay back in 2 to 3 days from costs right now. So, did you say no? No, that's from today's prices. Yeah. So like a gigahash, if you have a 65 nanometer process, a gigahash costs you roughly about $10 on a board. So that's like 3 or 4 days maybe of returns. So it's incredible returns. Now the chip industry has like very long lead times compared to what Bitcoiners are used to. However, I worry like we need to distribute out this mining capacity very broadly. And that's a big concern. I've been talking to people like Jez Sand, who's been pounding on me like, we need to be able to change the proof of work in case like a Chinese fab just comes to crush Bitcoin. So there are some questions that I think as an industry we have to like figure out how we're going to answer them when they come up, and we have to at least start building governance and structures and working groups to deal with these questions. Like I don't know. I mean, how to give you guys a sense of scale, but like a 20 nanometer, an 18 nanometer process Bitcoin chip, if a fab wanted to come totally dominate Bitcoin mining, it would be very easy. And if the NSA told Samsung to stay in our country, we're going to need these from you in 8 weeks, it would be very, very easy. And so I think that these are like, I don't think they're real existential threats today, but they kind of, when you imagine them and like how we deal with them, they, I think, should indicate like, guys, like we're all gonna at some level go compete, but we also have to really come together and make sure that like this ecosystem has good, stable, foundations. So that, yeah, those are on my mind. A fab is where the chips are made. Yeah, and there's a lot of spare, what's called wafer capacity in the world. Yeah.
You asked about what keeps me awake in the cryptocurrency, and this is going to sound strange, but ultimately, if we're trying to explain to people, and I call it friction-free, right? So in 2013, there's no reason why when I can send you a picture, an audio file, a video file, or an email, and it takes 2 seconds, that money takes 4 days. So that's the story that's being sold. But then on the flip side, the UI and UX in the Bitcoin industry, I mean blockchain, you need a rocket science degree to even download the app and do anything with it. So at one stage, we're busy out there going, this is amazing, it's unbelievable, it's going to change the world. And on the second side, when Stefan earlier on going, I'm thinking of buying some coins, I was hiding because I was worried he might go, Shaq, you know about this. And I'm like, it's going to be a 45-minute operation, and halfway through, the thing's going to crash. And I'm sure there's a lot of people here who understand that because we live in an age where virality happens because it's friction-free. And somebody says, hey, what are you doing on my phone? You go, well, you know what? You press one button here and you get all the world's music. You press another button here and you get all the world's films on there. And then they're like, and what about this Bitcoin space? Like, let's sit down, let's have a cup of tea. And you know what? Hopefully by the end of it, you may understand it. You'll go, you know what? This is too complicated. I don't want to get involved in it. To me, that is the biggest challenge for growth happening on the consumer side. I don't know who's going to fix that. I'm not smart enough to fix that, but that is the biggest challenge for this going mainstream. People say, when's Mrs. Smith, who's 60 years old, going to adopt it? I don't even know when Miss Smith, who's 16 years old, is going to adopt it, because she looks at Instagram, she looks at Twitter, and then you give her blockchain. I don't even understand it, and I've got people around me who live, sleep, eat, breathe this stuff. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges. The UI and the UX needs fixing.
I see it as super. I'm optimistic because I was here 2 years ago, and 2 years ago we didn't have any apps. Yeah. We had nothing. We were sending Bitcoins over paper wallets. So fast forward 2 years, we have a huge London conference, and we had a huge San Jose conference, and we have a foundation, and we have multiple Android apps and multiple iPhone apps, which you still can't download because Apple doesn't let you do. You have to Roger can explain to you. You could download it from the Korean Apple Store or something like that. It's really weird, and it's crazy because you go to Berlin or you go to here in London, you have multiple restaurants that accept Bitcoin. My bar in New York City, we accept Bitcoin, and we do 2-3 transactions a night. Literally, I'm not even there right now. And last night I get 3 BitPay emails from BitPay saying transaction notice was done. Who's going and paying in Bitcoin? Random people are hearing about Bitcoin, are reading about it, and buying up. And they're figuring it out. Sure, it's still extremely difficult, and the user experience and the user interface is still really, really hard. But we're going to get there, and slowly but surely, it's growing, and we're building. And we need people like you to join the foundation and build the infrastructure. Sorry for the plug, but build the infrastructure.
But do you think that's like an existential threat, this UI UX thing? Like to me, that's something that's, it's like you need the Square of Bitcoin apps for sure, right? But it doesn't seem to me, I think, I'm with you, like I think it's growth limiting, not like destruction or something.
No, I don't think it's destructive. I just think when we live in a world that we can go to some of the world's best UI teams and go deal with this. And I've showed some amazing designers and going, check this out. How would you fix it? And
They're like, oh my God.
What are you even trying to fix? And then you have to explain to them what Bitcoin is. And they're like, so sorry, you lost me. There's this ecosystem and there's this thing. And we'll get there with time.
The barrier to entry is so difficult to get involved in the Bitcoin space now. You're right, 100%. And that's what's like stopping it. So it's like a growth spurt.
It's partly, I mean, CEOs need vision and money to pay into this. But here's a good story for you. Okay. We launched, and then one of the first things we did for fun is we wrote a send Bitcoin over SMS to feature phone tool. Okay, it's great. I used to work.
BitSend, right?
Yeah, BitSend, right. So I used to work in East Africa. I wanted people on feature phones to be able to send and receive value. With Twilio, it took 2 weeks. Okay, and we baked in like you could do Twitter, you could do emails, right? It is not hard to write that. You can, and I could today just say send blah to blah. However, that's illegal and I'll go to prison in the States without regulatory because I'm now doing money transmittal. And so, but you know, and the fact that remains unlaunched until we're licensed, right? So that's the other half of that problem.
Existing consumer companies, they don't necessarily have to be finance companies, it's when existing household names of people who are comfortable with their UIs just hook into the Bitcoin system via APIs. So the average Joe isn't having to go through this mission of being, they can look at it purely from a number aspect that I had 10 Bitcoins, I now have 9.7. They don't need to know that there were 800 different transactions that took place over so many systems for that to be verified. That should all be getting done in the background. Same as when an SMS is sent. Pamir and I both have run SMS companies, and if 10 or 12 years ago, we spent our life traveling around Europe talking to telcos who would give us the best package on buying bulk messaging, and we'd reroute it through one country and bounce it to another to evade this thing called SMS tax. The average person, they're not interested in that. All they want to do is, I want to hit my friend's name or hit a contact button, mom, send SMS, hi, I will be late, and it arrives. They don't want to know that it went through 4 different networks. At the moment, it feels like we're trying to make it easy, but at the same time, average Joe is getting confused with all the limitations. So it's, I guess, guys like you with the companies you're running, making it easier.
You should fund someone to just build a proof of concept, like add on to the Telefonica mobile wallet, right? So and go get them in. That's what I think.
You have money movement within countries is not as it's still bad, but it's not as bad as moving money globally. You have companies like Dwala that are opening up, and you can send someone else's Dwala account. Same thing with SMS. Sending SMS domestically is fairly cheap, if not free. Sending an SMS globally can cost you 30, 40 cents a text, right? You look at a company like WhatsApp or Lime. WhatsApp is the ability for over data, and everyone loves the UI to do instant SMS globally, so it's frictionless. What if you went to WhatsApp and you said, guys, integrate Bitcoin? So instead of send a text, send money. What you just did there is you literally made it available for me, my friend in China, my friend in Korea, my friend in Russia to send money within each other instantly with no fee. And it's a UI people know about and they love, and everyone has WhatsApp already downloaded on their phone, so it's perfect. Do you know anyone in that company? I want to call.
I do know.
Great idea.
I do know the guys very well, and
a great idea.
Conversations with many companies in this space, and that's when I was talking about consumer products which already got traction, hooking in some form of API. But that's where the regulation comes in, because you go and talk to the CFO, the chief counsel there.
Like,
the first thing he says is, anarchists, they want to blow up the world. I have my own business to run. I don't want to be associated with it. So there's an education process taking place. And I think that's going to take some time. And we really need to get to those people. They need to be in this room going, look how this can enhance your business. If you look at Tencent and QQ, one of the largest companies in China, their whole revenue model is based on a virtual currency system, microtransactions off their own, not Bitcoin based. So they understand this. I think it's just a timeline. It's whoever can help speed the progress that's being made is going to be ahead of the curve in winning, whether it's from an investing point of view or just getting mass adoption.
And that's kind of my perspective, that like there are all these interesting infrastructure plays to be made where it's partnerships, it's technology infrastructure with people existing licenses and businesses. That's kind of a weird looking startup. This is to my point to you guys earlier. It's a weird looking startup to VCs because it's like, is that what's the product?
Partnerships.
Yeah, but there is a lot of opportunity there for
And
sure.
it's going to take one of these companies, right? You need one of these, whether it's WhatsApp or Instagram, to go out and accept this. And as is always the case, one major company accepts it. There's an article that goes out.
Dominoes.
Yeah, it's a knock-on effect. It's who's going to have the risk capacity and the understanding on the regulation side that regulation necessarily may not even be written, but they're willing to go through the process and to win the battle here. And I think then we'll see a knock-on effect. So it's a great position we're in, that Sand Hill Road and Silicon Valley VCs are investing in the Bitcoin companies because they may be one of their portfolio companies that actually ends up taking the risk, and then we're on to stage 2.
So I think one of the things that people are curious about in this space are metrics, because metrics at the end of the day illustrate how exciting the space is. So Charlie, can you share any of your metrics with BitInstant, and maybe you can also explain a little bit more about BitInstant, like effectively the problems you guys are solving and how you're taking money from a lot of different channels.
Sure. So like I was saying before, Gareth, his idea was that if you're gonna have this frictionless currency being able to move from person to person fairly instantly, if no one can get it or no one can redeem it back for fiat, then it's kind of redundant. It's not going to work out. So how do you do that? The issue with credit cards, ACH transfers, is that there are chargebacks and there are issues. So the first thing we did is we went with cash, because everyone has cash. So in the US, we made it available for anyone to walk into a 7-Eleven, a Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Duane Reade, and purchase Bitcoin by simply going to our website, creating an account, and saying, I want to buy $400 worth of Bitcoin, print a deposit slip, go into a store. More recently, as of last week, we also launched the ability to instantly buy Bitcoins from your bank account. And we handle all the fraud, and we charge a 0.75% fee. It's less than 1%. At the same time, and this is just the United States, at the same time, we offer the ability to, if you have Bitcoins already and you need money instantly, we can push money to your bank account within 30 minutes. And for a lower fee, if you can wait a day, we can push the money to your bank account in a day. And so what we're doing is we're going to be going to every country, including the UK, Canada. We're in Russia, US, and a few other countries, but we're going to be going to Indonesia, Africa, Middle East, and open that up to the same available options. So if someone has cash in their hand in the United States, I want it where they can walk into a 7-Eleven and their family member in Indonesia can walk out of a 7-Eleven in Indonesia with cash within a few minutes. So we grew over the past 2 years. Our company size is about 20 people in our office in New York. We have we just moved into a new office. It's 3,400 square feet. It's really exciting. We raised a round of a total, I think, of 1.5 million. And we're currently processing around $10 million per month in just Bitcoin purchases. Bitcoin sales, I can't share the metrics yet, but it's around that same price. So roughly you're talking about between 50 and 60,000 transactions a month of Bitcoin purchases and sales. Our average transaction size is around like $300. So most people don't want to buy Bitcoin on exchanges. It's complicated. Who wants to go put a trade order in? My mother doesn't want to do that. My grandmother doesn't want to do that. But my mother is perfectly capable of putting her bank account information, or even easier, walking into a Duane Reade like she does right now. And most people aren't buying over $10,000 worth of Bitcoin. So we're serving that under $10,000 customer, which is a totally different regulatory environment. At the same time, we kind of realized early on when we started that, hey, this regulatory environment is going to get heated up really, really quickly. And I said this back in 2011. So if you look, I registered for FinCEN, BitInstant, in 2011 and registered a Know Your Customer policy when FinCEN had no idea what Bitcoin was. Not only that, we have money transmission licenses in 30 states, and we are legally allowed to operate in 42 out of the 48 states now. So if you're in a state like California, you can't use BitInstant. Unfortunately, it sucks, but if you're going to be operating within a country, you have to operate within the bounds of the law, because you need to show the world that you're not going to be an anarchist and you're not going to try to overtake the government. You want to work with the government and take banks and take this global financial system and make it better. And you're not going to do that. Look what Gandhi said. Look what Gandhi did. Forget the quote that I always make this quote. It's like, and Cameron and Tyler in their presentation in San Jose stole it from me. But the quote was, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. So we're probably somewhere in the early fighting stage. All the good press, everyone was saying, yeah, we've already passed that. But if you look at the press, it was the laughing stage. The press is ridiculing us. They're making fun of us. It's cool, it's fun to read about, but they don't take it seriously. It's a fad. It's like a yo-yo or a Pokemon card to these guys. They think it's going to be over in a week from now, but we all know that it's not. So we got to really build out this infrastructure and grow this thing.
Great.
Metrics, that was the
Yeah, so can you share metrics for BitPay?
Oh, sorry.
I can't share metrics for BitPay. I can share metrics for Coindesk if they're relevant. An interesting number out of Coindesk is 54% of all visitors are non-USA. And that was a really interesting moment when I started looking at that, because having been involved in a bunch of companies out of the USA lately, it's 50% or so is a interesting number, whereas up until then it used to be 70 or 80%, and VCs or investors were going, well, we're not really interested in what's going on outside the USA. Here, it's the reverse that's happening. And I think it's going to lean more and more over the years or over the months to non-USA traffic. So we don't have anybody on the ground in USA. It's a global information play for us.
So how much does the large exchange MTGOX process right now on a monthly basis?
I actually wanted to share some foundation stats too, though. 60% of foundation members are non-US. So it's truly global.
Wait, was it
do we have?
60, 60?
660, yeah.
How many members do we have?
500 or 600 individual members and maybe 20 institutional members.
How many attendees were at the conference?
Oh yeah, and we had 1,200 people come to Bitcoin San Jose.
Wow.
So also there are board seats up for election for the foundation. You need to either have an institutional membership or an individual, and then you can run, and we would like you guys to run. So Mt. Gox in April, which was the last month before we sued them, had a little over, the Gox USD liquidity pool had about $1 billion worth of trades. And that's with no shorting and no leverage. So that's just like raw liquidity trades. I'm happy to share Coinlab's numbers. I mean, we netted, which they didn't pay us, nearly $1 million on that for a portion of the fees. So there's good money to be made at scale on the exchanges. Although, like many, we've discovered it's hard to get dollars out of Mt. Gox. They are now down to about a quarter of that, I think, 200 to 250 million.
Below 50% now.
Yeah, so their liquidity's fleeing. It's not all going. Some of it is sitting on the sidelines now. U.S. liquidity, it's very hard in the U.S. It's just you can't like I know the owner of a bank who tried to wire money to Bitstamp, and the CEO of his bank, the guy who ran it for him, was a U.S. bank, called him at the second one and said, please don't wire any more money to Bitstamp. And that's nothing to do with Bitstamp, who are great, like totally great guys. It's just that you're in the US and wiring money repeatedly to Eastern European countries, and your bank compliance officers freak out in the States.
Yeah, any former Soviet countries, if you're wiring to them, they just go crazy.
It's tough. So I think that a lot of that liquidity will come back when there are good, open, regulated offerings in the States, but it's nowhere right now.